They met when they were 8 years old, two small girls sitting at the back of a classroom, united by a shared dislike of a teacher who seemed to take pleasure in embarrassment. Celeste thought that was where their bond came from, a mutual understanding of what it felt like to be singled out. Years later, she would realize that while she had been feeling the sting, Diane had been studying the mechanics of it. The journals surfaced by accident. A wine night, laughter, an overnight bag forgotten on the couch. The small leather notebook slipped between cushions. Celeste found it while tidying up the next morning. She almost placed it on the counter untouched. Almost. Inside were no emotional outbursts, no dramatic confessions, just clean handwriting, dates, names, outcomes, observations. It read like field research. Celeste's name appeared often. The boyfriend who had drifted away in 2019 introduced alternative at vulnerable moment. The promotion that never materialized raised pattern concerns temperament. The quiet shift in their friend group seed doubt individually. Even a note about Celeste's mother and an old humiliation in Barcelona, labeled simply effective leverage. There was a star beside one entry. In the margin next to her name were 2 words: long game. Celeste read every page twice. She photographed them carefully, making sure not to cast a shadow. Then she slid the notebook back exactly where she had found it. Later, she texted Diane with a heart emoji, telling her she'd left it on the counter. That was the moment something inside her stilled. She didn't confront her. She didn't rage. She simply withdrew warmth. Diane's growing consulting firm leaned heavily on their shared history, on proximity to Celeste's steadily rising reputation. "My oldest friend," Diane would say in meetings. "We think alike." Celeste never contradicted her publicly. She just stopped appearing beside her. She declined joint panels, updated her website, gave interviews where she spoke about her mentors, her independent projects, her influences. She never mentioned Diane, not once. In an industry built on association, absence speaks loudly. Questions began to surface. Investors asked whether they were formally aligned. Diane answered vaguely at first, then defensively. The timing was delicate. Celeste made sure of that. Diane was closing her largest funding round that quarter. Around the same time, Celeste reached out to Petra, who had vanished from Diane's orbit years earlier. Over coffee in Amsterdam, Petra told a familiar story: subtle rumors, private concerns, a fiancé lost, a job dissolved within weeks. Petra had rebuilt her life, but the confusion had lingered. Celeste didn't dramatize it. She simply told her she wasn't imagining things. She asked only that, if ever asked directly, Petra would tell the truth. Others had similar stories. None needed coaching. They only needed confirmation. The gala in April was almost surreal. Diane accepted an award celebrating her advocacy for women in business. Celeste attended in ivory, smiling, applauding. She hugged Diane backstage, congratulated her, raised a glass. Elsewhere in the room sat a journalist who had been quietly researching a broader story about subtle professional sabotage. Not handed documents, not fed secrets, just following threads that had begun to converge. Women who had independently compared notes, patterns that resembled architecture. The article, when it appeared months later, was measured and careful. It didn't accuse recklessly. It described recurring dynamics, private warnings framed as concern, reputations softened in closed rooms, opportunities quietly redirected. Multiple women spoke on record. The parallels were difficult to ignore. By then, Diane's funding round had collapsed under what investors politely called reputational ambiguity. A board review widened. Clients paused contracts. No scandal erupted. There were no headlines screaming wrongdoing, just doubts settling like fog, blurring confidence. Celeste was in Portugal when the piece circulated widely. She sat on a terrace above the sea, watching light fracture across the water. Her phone vibrated steadily on the table beside her. She let it. The Atlantic was impossibly blue, indifferent to human strategy. She had not lied. She had not forged or fabricated. She had not exposed anything that wasn't already true. She had simply stepped aside and allowed gravity to do what it eventually does to unstable structures. Somewhere far away, in an apartment growing quieter by the hour, Diane was learning what Celeste had learned years earlier, that cruelty, when practiced long enough, leaves patterns. And patterns, once illuminated, require no embellishment to collapse. Celeste opened her book and finally began to read, the wind lifting the edge of the page, the sea stretching forward without memory.